we do know guys that are free agents, and there are some players out there that could fit this role that Gambo is kind of discussing the Diamondbacks seeking.
Or there are some guys that I have on my list who really don't fit any of the buckets that Gambo is talking about. But I'm also like, well, hey, he sort of makes sense. Why don't we talk about him? So I'll start with a few of those guys. None of these guys are shortstops or catchers or relievers. So
Sure.
based on Gambo's report, I don't necessarily expect these things to happen. But in my opinion, they at least would make sense on paper. Randall Grichuk is one guy, a right-handed hitting outfielder who really does some serious damage against lefties. I think he had a 995 OPS against lefties last year. He is someone who can play center field. He doesn't necessarily grade out well there, but he can play all three outfield positions. I guess the biggest hangup with Grichuk is that he was claimed off waivers by the Angels toward the end of the year, and he had a 120 OPS plus with the Rockies, and then he had an 80 OPS plus with the Angels down the stretch. So didn't exactly end the season on a high note, but he has a long track record of hitting lefties well, and he would be kind of that right-handed hitting fourth outfielder type that we discussed yesterday.
What about Robbie Grossman?
Robbie Grossman, man, the man hit third for the Texas Rangers at the start of their run to the World Series, which still blows my mind. They eventually kind of ditched it, and Robbie Grossman, I think he like pinch hit once or something in the World Series. He wasn't really a factor for most of the rest of the postseason after he struggled early on. But yeah, Robbie Grossman is a guy who also has a history of really destroying left-handed pitching. He slashed 309, 416, 536 against lefties in 2023. Doesn't really hit righties much at all. Although he is a switch hitter, but it's sort of a situation where you really only want him facing lefties if you can make that happen. He never really swings the bat, which is possibly my favorite thing about Robbie Grossman. He never chases pitches out of the zone, and yet he still strikes out like a decent amount, I suspect, because he's just taking like a lot of called strikes. He's a relatively passive hitter, but he managed to still do some damage against lefties in 2023. I think he could make some sense. His defense at this stage in his career is not particularly good. He'd be sort of Joc Pederson-esque in that he's an outfielder who you probably don't want to see in the outfield. So I'm not really sure it would make sense to have two of those guys on the same roster. So yeah, I'm not sure I necessarily feel all that confident about that one. A couple other guys that I have, CJ Cron as a first baseman. Of course, the brother of former Diamondback Kevin Cron, who people might remember from back in the days. Been with the Rockies for a while, kind of a similar story as Grichuk, where he was let go by the Rockies, found his way to the Angels, and was pretty terrible once he arrived with the Angels. It feels like every play that the Angels claimed off waivers down the stretch just was miserable toward the end of the season. He had a 519 OPS once he was brought in by the Angels. But on the whole, for 2023, he hit 248, 295, 434. Has a decent track record of hitting left-handed pitching. Not necessarily a super exciting option on paper, but someone who, I guess could back up Christian Walker at first base and hit lefties a little bit. And then my last one in this first category, Garrett Cooper, someone who kind of fits in a similar category as a first baseman, could also take some DH at bats against lefties. Kind of a nice platoon setup there with Joc Pederson. Garrett Cooper was actually a pretty good hitter just a few years ago. If you look at his numbers in 2023, a bit of a down season by his standards. He did hit 17 homers with 61 RBI, but at this stage in his career, he's not exactly the player he once was. But again, he's got, an ability to hit left-handed pitching and could slot in nicely in some capacity for the Diamondbacks.
There's a lot of discussion in the chat about Tim Anderson potentially.
Yeah.
There's also an idea being floated out there that I hate. Tim here says Tim Anderson could be a huge bounce back candidate, doesn't strike out, fantastic base runner, could back up third base, shortstop, and second base, high average guy, minor downside, weak jaw, as we all saw. Also, Gabriel brought up AJ Pollock, and I hate that idea more than I hate most things in life. I hate that more than I hate traffic. I hate that more than I hate having to get a new driver's license after losing my wallet. I hate that idea. AJ Pollock is like the anti JD Martinez. He's a former
Wow.
Diamondback that was here, that has had some success elsewhere, but I couldn't want him back on this team any less. Right. And again, much like JD Martinez, it's my heart getting in the way here. You said very mean things about us and we don't want you back. Not now, not never. Right. And so that's the way I feel. But I'm sure there's more rational thoughts behind other people maybe wanting him to come back. Speaking of potential targets, Jesse, let's bring back Nick Ahmed for shortstop if we're looking for shortstops. Who says no?
Yeah, I mean, Gambo mentioned shortstop, and I mean, presumably they want someone who bats right-handed. There aren't a whole lot of those out there. Nick Ahmed is one of them. I don't think the Diamondbacks are going to bring Nick Ahmed back. But yeah, the
By the way,
options at short.
did we ever discuss on this show the fact that Jordan Lawler is projected to have the 4th highest WAR on this team in 2024, according to Zips? That computer system is broken, Jesse. It's broken over there. I'm telling you.
Is that true? I mean, I guess
That's,
maybe among position players. Is that what it is?
yeah, it's among position players, correct. Yeah. Not great. I don't like that at all. Anyway, but actually maybe it is great. Maybe it's great.
I mean,
I don't know.
I think you should like that very much.
I guess I should like that anymore because there's our shortstop answer right there, potentially, if that's the case. But what about some other more reasonable options, potentially?
Yeah, there's a few shortstops. Again, I wouldn't say I'm all that compelled by any of these, but Gambo mentioned shortstops. So we're looking at shortstops.
When you're looking at these, are you looking at guys that could fill that DH role as well as filling like that backup role, or what? What do you thought?
I
What
mean,
is your thought here? Or is it just
do you want Elvis Andrus like as your platoon
no?
partner with Joc Pederson in the DH
Oh,
slot? Probably
maybe
not.
maybe in 2016. I don't. When would that have been? Maybe then.
Even then, I'm not. Even then, I'm not sure. Yeah, looking at some of these options here, Elvis Andrus is one of them. He's 35 years old. He just passed the 2,000 hit mark. Shouts out to him for pulling that off and having what has really been a pretty remarkable career. He's stuck around for a long time, still grades out well defensively. A strong veteran presence in the clubhouse for sure. I don't really see this happening. I don't really understand exactly why the Diamondbacks would want to do this. The whole shortstop thing in general, I guess, is slightly confusing for me. I mean, the team already has Jordan Lawler. They already have Kevin Newman. They already have Blaze Alexander in the system as well.
Yeah.
I guess if you don't want to be forced to have Jordan Lawler and maybe you're not totally sure if Blaze Alexander is ready at this point. And Kevin Newman, like he's there to try out, but you don't want to count on him. I guess it's maybe helpful to have, one more guy in camp who can play shortstop. Elvis Andrus is probably going to sign a major league deal. So I'm not sure the Diamondbacks would really want to spend real money on someone like him. A couple other names real quick. Kike Hernandez, someone that Diamondbacks fans are very familiar with, as long as we're talking about longtime Dodgers, coming to Arizona. Kike Hernandez was traded from the Red Sox to the Dodgers midway through the 2023 season. And as tends to be the case, he was much better with LA the moment that he arrived there. He had like a low 700s OPS. It wasn't anything fantastic, but he's generally hit lefties fairly well. He played a lot of shortstop in 2023. I don't know if you really want him playing that much shortstop, but he has some defensive flexibility. He can play the outfield a little bit. I guess he could be someone that the Diamondbacks look at after what was really a pretty severe down season for him. The last one I have in the shortstop category, Alberto Mondesi, who came up with the Kansas City Royals. I think played it was like 19 years old and came up and contributed to their World Series run a number of years back. A pretty exciting player in his first few years in the majors. Still only 28 years old, but he missed all of the 2023 season with the Boston Red Sox. He's missed really a ton of time with injuries over the last few years, so his development is just kind of stalled out. I imagine that could be potentially a minor league deal situation where the Diamondbacks could bring him into the fold and kind of see what he has to offer. But again, I don't really understand the purpose of any of these guys, if I'm being honest.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, but that's about all I got as far as shortstops are concerned.
That's all we got, I guess. Well, and then when speaking of all we got, if we're talking about catchers, there aren't a lot left. According to roster resource, Jesse, I see five. Gary Sanchez, Manny Pena, Yasmani Grandal, Kurt Casale, and Cam Gallagher are the only catchers left as free agents, period. So if the Diamondbacks do upgrade at catcher, it needs to be one of those guys or a trade, right? If they're gonna, I mean, they have quite a few options for backup catcher right now. As we had on this show, Tucker Barnhart is one of those options, but we don't know if the Diamondbacks are pursuing something further. Based on Gambo just tweeting this out, this feels like a more recent kind of thing that they are still in the market for a catcher.
Yeah, I guess they maybe just want to add one more guy to the mix here. You've got Barnhart, you've got Jose Herrera, of course, the incumbent as the backup catcher. Maybe you just want, one more guy to add to that mix. As you mentioned, there are some other names in there. Ronaldo Hernandez, someone the Diamondbacks added on a minor league deal. He hasn't played in the majors yet, so I don't really view him as being a strong candidate for that backup role, but I guess it could be possible. And then you also have Adrian Del Castillo, who made the jump to AAA in 2023 and could maybe get a look for that role. But again, I mean, Gabby Moreno is super young. Do you really want to pair him with, a catcher who hasn't played in the majors yet? Yeah. I don't really see the fit there either. So yeah, maybe you're looking at bringing in, Manny Pena or Kurt Casale or whomever is, one more guy to add to that mix.
I want a veteran paired with Gabby. That's what I would want. I would want somebody that Gabby could potentially learn from and become a better defensive catcher behind the plate, learn how to, like, he's already very good at all of these things, but right now, to get those little tips and pointers to be able to pick someone's brain, I feel like it would be invaluable for him. And again, that's Tim brings it up, Gary Sanchez or bust. Gary Sanchez just feels like a very good addition here. But I feel like, again, this might be a little, maybe cost too much for the Diamondbacks.
I just don't know if I see the Diamondbacks signing another player to a guaranteed major league contract. I'll be curious to hear more from Mike Hazen whenever he talks after this Joc Pederson deal is made official. But, just based on that tweet that we saw from Gambo, again, you're talking about adding depth to the bullpen, depth to the catching position, depth at shortstop. You're clearly not looking for a starter at shortstop or catcher. I don't think the Diamondbacks are looking for like a back end reliever. It feels like they've entered the part of the offseason where you're making moves on the margins. And Gary Sanchez, he's not necessarily a frontline catcher. I could maybe see him taking a backup role, but you're certainly having to give Gary Sanchez a major league contract after the season that he had in 2023.